No word from the FBI or the Justice Department yet since yesterday's early morning raid at Mar-a-Lago. However, Fox News has learned it was part of an investigation into the handling of classified presidential records, which began earlier this year after 15 boxes of documents had already been transferred from his Florida estate. Yesterday, the FBI executed a search warrant looking for more materials it claims the former president took with him after he left the White House in 2021. The raid drawing outrage from Trump supporters who quickly gathered outside Mar-a-Lago. And the former president was in New York at the time and issued this statement. These are dark times for our nation, as my beautiful home, Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, is currently under siege, raided, and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before. David Spunt will get us started with the news. David.
Well, Harris, we know that 2 months ago, back in June, an official from the Justice Department was meeting with officials at Mar-a-Lago and the Trump team to specifically ask for potentially any more sensitive documents that may have been at Mar-a-Lago. We're told President Trump actually popped by that meeting. It's not clear what happened between that point and yesterday when this search warrant was executed and FBI agents were inside Mar-a-Lago. Listen, there's a lot we don't know about yesterday. Let's go through what we do know. We know that this is related to potential classified information about Donald Trump and his staff allegedly took to Florida when he left office. We're told this is not directly related to the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Per multiple sources, a federal magistrate signed off on the search warrant for FBI agents to go to Mar-a-Lago and take multiple boxes of items. Now, back in February, Harris, the archivist of the United States, now retired archivist David Ferriero, wrote to the House Committee on Oversight about these boxes and was in contact with Trump's team. The U.S. government eventually was able to take 15 boxes with potentially classified information. Fox News is told by a source that inside Mar-a-Lago yesterday, FBI agents looked in every office, safe, grabbed documents and boxes without going through them on the property. We're told photographs were taken. The source said they took boxes and documents to go through later once they left the property. A source said, quote, they were not being judicious about what they took, end quote. Attorney General Merrick Garland was aware of this raid prior to it happening. So is FBI Director Christopher Wray, which is standard protocol. Garland really, Harris, is in a pressure cooker every day. Democrats saying he's not doing enough to investigate the former president. Republicans saying he's not doing enough to investigate Hunter Biden, the current president's son. Garland says that he operates without fear or favor. Right now, DOJ and FBI both silent. I've reached out several times today. Does not look like we're going to get any statement from them on this. And they always say they're silent during active investigations. However, I said the circumstances in this case a little different. Still does not seem like we will hear anything at this point, but we'll follow it. Harris.
David Spunt, great reporting today. Thank you very much. Martha, what is it that you think that the American people see when they look at this reporting today?
Well, it depends on where they look. And
Fair.
it depends on who they're listening to. You know, I'm kind of reminded in the early stages of the phone call that happened in the Oval Office that led to the impeachment. And if you watched certain networks, it was an already slam dunk that the call was so atrocious and so treasonous, and words like that were being used before the American people had a chance to actually listen to the transcript. And the president on the other side saying, you know, it was an absolutely perfect phone call, right? So there's an attempt in these kind of moments to color the entire thing, to sort of curry favor with both sides, to get people ramped up on both sides. And I would just caution everybody to wait until we get more information about what is in this affidavit, which we may or may not ever see. We'll see if that happens. Also, when you get the return on this investigation, where you get the report about exactly what it is they culled from this investigation and what they were looking for. I mean, you even have people like Andrew Cuomo coming forward and saying that we absolutely need to have the DOJ must immediately explain the reason for this raid. And why? Because of exactly what David Spunt said at the end of his report. This is an extraordinary situation. So you need. Last night when I watched this, I was a little bit unnerved. Like, worrying about what this could lead to in this country, what kind of unrest. We talk a lot about how the country is so fraught and the possibility for unrest, which none of us want to see. But this has to be handled extraordinarily carefully. They better have something incredibly solid that they knew was there and that they went in for, because you are playing with fire in this situation in this country. And we all want to see this end peacefully and responsibly.
Kayleigh, out of everybody on this couch, he was your boss. You know him best. This was his primary residence. This feels personal.
Very personal for someone who the FBI was, you could argue, looking at for 6 years. I mean, we know about the dossier. We know the way it was peddled. We know that there was an insurance policy if you read Peter Strzok's text. So all of the things President Trump was saying, this just pours fuel on that fire. I will say, I think you can't look at this in isolation. I think you have to look at this in light of other Trump-related prosecutions. What I mean by that is, in this case, it's the Presidential Records Act. Jonathan Turley pointed out to Bill earlier, it's very rarely used in a criminal context. It's being used here. You look at Paul Manafort, who was the campaign manager for Donald Trump. This was a FARA violation they pursued. FARA has been used 7 times in 50 years. But it's brought out against Paul Manafort. This despite there being rampant FARA violations, 62% of people admitting that they report late. And then the Logan Act used against Michael Flynn. This is a 1799 statute that has never in the history of this country been used to successfully prosecute anyone, but it's used as a pretext to go in and look at Michael Flynn. Why are never before used statutes or rarely used statutes in those contexts being used in this manner? It raises questions, especially as the FBI doesn't go after Larry Nassar the way that they should have initially, especially as 1/3 of Portland rioter cases are dropped. You know, especially when you look at the abortion facilities that you seem like you had to drag the DOJ to look into some of these inquiries. Why weren't there raids in these contexts? But there's a raid here. It's a question.
Well, and when you talk about not just raids, but also the hunger for the truth, the assassination attempt on a sitting U.S. Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh.
Yes.
You know, there were a lot of questions for why certain things get done and others don't. And of course, we didn't even put Hunter Biden on that list, but there is a current investigation. So, you know, Bill, as we look at this, though, and kind of, this was a man they tried to impeach and successfly did once. Like, what more can we learn about Donald Trump at this point? At this point, we almost can see his thoughts.
Yeah, it's just keep on coming, I was going to say. Look, I don't know what's going on. I think David Spunt did a good job of laying out the facts based on where we think they are at the moment. I do agree with Andrew Cuomo, Martha, when he sent that tweet about whatever it is, it must be consequential. It can't just apply to presidential records. And I thought about that. And then Andrew McCarthy, writing for National Review, filed a piece 2 hours ago. And he said this all has to do with January 6th. That's his working theory at the moment. Now, why would that be? Bill Barr did an interview with our former colleague, Catherine Herridge, on Friday on CBS News. And if you go back and watch it, a lot of her questions were directed around January 6th. I'm just quoting Barr, sort of paraphrasing what he said. There are subpoenas that have been handed out for a grand jury investigation into what I do not know. But Pat Cipollone, the former attorney for the president at the time during January 6th, is one of those who was subpoenaed. And what Barr was talking about was that ultimately he and Trump would have executive privilege. And he wasn't quite sure how the courts would come down on that. Maybe that's an issue that would go to the U.S. Supreme Court ultimately. But Herridge asked him if the president committed a crime. And he said it's hard to say. You'd really have to know his, quote, state of mind. And then he went on to deflect, and he did not sound necessarily convinced that a crime had been committed on January 6th. Why am I bringing this full circle? If Andy McCarthy's right, and Merrick Garland went into Mar-a-Lago to try and find evidence that suggested that he was guilty of a crime around January 6th, this is what the committee would be looking at. And what Barr said in this interview, he said during the early days of this hearing, he was convinced that they were going after underlings. But toward the end, he was convinced otherwise, that it was Cipollone, maybe someone like Mark Meadows, and President Trump he thought was certainly in the crosshairs. According to him, in the interview filed last Friday, the 5th of August.
We will follow the facts as they happen, but those are interesting details. Carly.
Yeah, I think Bill's really onto something, because it just seems like there is a huge part of this story that's missing, and that is justification. President Trump and his family members came out this morning and said that they've been working very closely with the National Archives on which documents to overturn. So if that's the case, then why would a federal judge approve a search warrant to be executed by over a dozen FBI agents so early in the morning that it's still dark outside, giving the Secret Service very little notice? Why? What sort of information would they be looking for unless it's politically motivated? We don't know yet. A lot of Republicans seem to think so. And I just want to say, Harris, the fact that half the country thinks that the DOJ is a de facto wing of the Democratic Party is a really big problem. It's not good. When you think about the examples that can't be ignored, Russia investigation, Hunter Biden laptop, school board meetings that have become hostile, Supreme Court protests that went by, really allowing those protesters to still be there, even though it breaks the law. So what will the fallout be? I think if Republicans get the opportunity, they're going to clean house and they're going to launch their own possibly politically motivated investigations. One last thing, a lot of Democrats are really celebrating this right now. If I were Hunter Biden, I'd be very worried about the 2024 presidential election, even more so than he was 2 days ago.
So, Bill, just to quickly revisit something that I saw on your show, and we are 91 days away from the midterm elections, and what you said was so interesting, tying this to January 6th, because that wasn't the date that many people are focused on. It's November 8th. But the local magistrate who issued that warrant in Palm Beach used to be a federal U.S. attorney. Mm-hmm. He left that office to go work for none other than Jeffrey Epstein. I just wondered if
he worked for people who worked for Epstein.
Part of the team.
Pilots, I think maybe a flight attendant perhaps, and a secretary and others.
Just your quick thoughts on the date November 8th in all of this.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I wish I could say, but I think the AG has to show the American people something and do it quickly. Mm-hmm. One thing I would add, and David Spunt just confirmed this, in January they handed over 15 boxes. Mm-hmm. That was in Mar-a-Lago. So in Trump's defense at this point, when he put out his statement yesterday about the cooperation that he had with the Department of Justice, if that was the case, you would think they would still be working on handing over
still be talking.
more talking, mm-hmm. and possibly handing over more boxes from Mar-a-Lago to the government investigation.
You're asking the same thing I did this morning. Why now?
Right.
Why this now? All right.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.